now we're down here. So now we're in the trachea, and the trachea is essentially composed of these tracheal cartilage right here. So these are the tracheal cartilage, and they're connected to each other by annular ligaments. And an easy way to remember it is it goes like all the way around. So just think of it like a year round or whatnot and think annular. So those are your annular ligaments. If you continue down the trachea, you're going to eventually come to a bifurcation. Now, this is anatomically not super correct, but it's okay. It still works. So you have your trachea, and this bifurcation is specifically called the carina. Now, what happens after that is it's just a naming game. Okay, so you're going to name it whether it's your primary, your secondary, or your tertiary bronchus or bronchi. So over here, the result from the first division, these are essentially, this is your primary bronchus, and then that makes this and this your secondary bronchus, and any type of branch after, like here, this would be your tertiary, and then all of these colored ones are essentially going to be your bronchioles. So this is actually found deep to your lungs, and you can see that if you look inside. So this is another view that you can see for some of those structures. So this is, for example, this would be your carina over here. Okay. Anyhow, so let's go over some of the surfaces of the lungs to begin with. So the surfaces are going to be, you know, this outer surface, this inner surface, down here, things like that. So we're going to start off with the base and the apex. So the base is going to be essentially down here. Sorry, see that? Down here. That's the base of the lung. If you look at it, it would be where your diaphragm touches it. That makes sense. And then the apex, if you look at it, this kind of looks like a mountain. So this part is going to be the apex of your lungs. After that, there is the costal surface. Costal sounds like your ribs. So all of this surface here, this is your costal surface because it's going to touch your ribs. Then there's the mediastinal surface. The mediastinal surface is, if you know where the mediastinum is, it's in here, right? Because that's essentially where the cavity is. That's where your heart's going to be. So all of this surface, as well as this surface, is your mediastinal surface. The only other structure that's found there under surface is the hilum. And the hilum is essentially where everything, all these vessels are entering your lung. So that's your hilum over here. So again, you've got your base, you've got your apex, your costal surface, your mediastinal surface in here and in here, and this is going to be your hilum. Okay. Moving on, let's focus on the right lung. So this is your right lung. I hope you can see some of the divisions. There's actually 3 different lobes. There's 1, 2, and 3 over here. And they're named very easily. This is your superior lobe. This is your middle lobe over here. And this is going to be your inferior lobe. Okay, in addition, you can identify fissures. So the lobes are divided by this line, right? And you can see this line is pretty, it's pretty parallel. So we call this the horizontal fissure. Whereas this line, do you see how it's kind of a diag? So we call this the oblique fissure. Again, 3 different lobes, 2 fissures. That's going to be on your right lung. On your left lung over here, we're only going to have 2 major lobes. So because there's 2 lobes, we're just going to call it the superior lobe and then the inferior lobe. And you can see that the division, or the fissure here, this is not horizontal, it's a diagonal one, so we're going to also call this an oblique fissure. Now, there's a couple of features that are associated with the different lobes. So one is this little part right here. If you look at it, it kind of looks like a tongue. So we're going to call it the lingula. Okay, so that's going to be this tongue. Then there is what we call the cardiac notch. So the cardiac notch is this portion right here. So this portion right here. It helps to form the lingula. So lingula, this curve is the cardiac notch. And then there's what we call the cardiac impression. The cardiac impression is right here. This is essentially where the heart is going to be, and it leaves its impression there. So on an exam, on the practicum, students might get confused with, oh, are you talking about the medial stymmal surface, or are you talking about the impression? Well, I would ask surface, so ID surface, and if I pointed to this whole area, here and here, that would be your mediastinal surface. But if it's just this portion, that's your cardiac impression, cardiac notch, and then lingual. I think that's everything. Okay. I think we're good.